Okay, so I think we're going live now, so that's brilliant. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Health and Wellness Show, week two. And this week we're going to be asking the question, what should we be eating? We have an absolutely brilliant lineup of guests today. I'm really pleased that everyone was able to link in and join us this morning. So this morning we have Carol Wildgoose, and we have Joe Hodson, and we have Anne Peckham, and Carol Wildgoose is my co-host. Would you like to come in and introduce yourself and just tell us a bit about yourself, Carol?
Yeah. Good morning. Sorry, I've muted my microphone. I do that all the time. Right. So my name is Carol Wildgoose. I'm a weight management and food relationship counsellor and coach. And basically, what I do is to work with people to help them to put dieting behind them and to start to really listen to what their body is telling them about what they need on a nutritional basis, because it's not one size fits all. So I really work with an individual rather than sort of a blanket set of rules that someone would need to work by.
Okay, thank you, Carol. I'm just going along the screen in order of how you appear this morning. So good morning, Joe. If you'd like to come and introduce yourself, please.
Hey, yeah, my name's Joe Hodson. I hate labels, so I struggle to label myself, but I'm a health and wellness coach. So basically, I see nutrition as the gateway to your optimum self. And for me, it's less about the science, and it's less about the advice giving, but primarily about supporting people through their own journey, so that they can become the sort of owner of their life as opposed to the victim of it. And I kind of do that through a nutritional gateway. I write a recipe blog, including cake, which is kind of also my coaching platform. And so there's tons and tons of inspiration, because for me it's all about creating curiosity around food choices, and just exploring things in a fun way as opposed to getting overwhelmed by it. I also have a health food business, a Whole Plus, so I've kind of got two things that are independent but they overlap. So yeah, but primarily I'm here in my coaching capacity. So yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Joe. And Anne Peckham, please come in and say hello.
Hi. Can you actually see me? Because I can't see me now.
Yeah, we can see you, Anne. It's fine.
Fantastic. Well, I am a health food and raw food coach, but what that actually means is that I know how, when people have a change in their diet, how unbelievably difficult they find. They get so confused, they don't know what they're doing, they think everything's going to be difficult. So I make it really easy to make foods that are full of nutritional and nutritious ingredients, rather than the usual suspects that you can buy from the supermarkets, which are full of all the nasties, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, later in this program. So that's what I do. I've written several books on it, one of which is Fabulous Cakes, Decadent Desserts and Hot, Healthy Chocolates, because I am a decadent Epicurean. I do not like going without. So there you go.
Lovely, thank you. So we've got lots of really passionate people here about food today. So in actual fact, my name's Emma, and I run emotional wellbeing programs for people in the community. So although my sort of expertise isn't like yours, and I bow down to your superior knowledge in the field of diet and nutrition this week, so I'll be doing most of the questioning. However, I understand about for me, when I was running sort of programs in my previous role, food came up as one of the days that I used to teach people about that link between nutrition and emotional health. And of course, this whole program, this whole series is about you know, the whole person. So that's kind of my interest in food. Really is about how we can eat the right things to, you know, to feel emotionally and mentally well, and the impact that has. So this week we're going to actually, the title of the show, as I said, is called What Should We Be Eating? And I put that in quotes because what we don't really want to do is be preaching to people about how we should all be, what we should be eating, and that kind of feeling of angst that, oh gosh, you know, I need to eat this low fat thing or this sugar free thing or that whatever, and the angst that can create. And I know we'll have a discussion about that a bit later. So in actual fact, we also have our first question that's been asked by somebody who is a follower of the show and of L4GTV, which I think I'll bring up after we've sort of talked about our first area. So if I forget, guys, do remind me to come back to that one. So firstly, I just want to talk about, you know, we hear a lot about food in the media, and you know, it almost seems like there's a different controversy about food that kind of comes out in the news. And although I don't actually have a TV or really look at the news in the sort of traditional format, you know, I often see things popping up on Facebook about, you know, this kind of either fad diet or some kind of, oh, you mustn't eat this type of food, you know, today because this is bad for you now, whereas the day before we were supposed to be eating, you know, kilos of it, kind of thing. And so that might sound like a bit of an extreme thing, but I think you get the gist that sometimes what we hear about food seems to be contradictory. So I want to put the question out there, really, firstly to Carol. You know, what's your take on the ways in which we've come to view food as mediated by the TV, the news, and the media industry, really?
Okay, thanks, Emma. First of all, I just want to pick up on something that you said a couple of minutes ago, which I think fits in really, really well with what we're talking about here. And you mentioned bowing down to superior knowledge, and that can in itself create sort of huge problems. It's my belief that actually within all of us, we are our best diet expert. That once we learn how to tune in to our bodies again, that we become the only people that really truly know what is good for our individual bodies. What people like myself and Anne and Joe can do is to give you the understanding, the theory behind it, and that will allow you to start to retune and to listen to your own body. And what has happened, unfortunately, is that we've kind of given the power away to diet experts, diet gurus, and the media and the government, really, to tell us what we should be eating, what is good for us and what is not. And when these things come out in the media, part of the problem is that they're very heavily biased, don't give us all the information that was actually used to create a study or the true results that came out of a study, and therefore it leaves us feeling completely and utterly bewildered. And this destroyed my life for about 20 years because I really did not know where to turn. I didn't know what to do. The things I was being not told, but it was in my face all day on, you know, it's with us on TV and in the media as to what we should be eating. That didn't feel right, and I couldn't understand why. Why was I different to everybody else? And it creates a huge gap, and it creates feelings of worthlessness and powerlessness. And just one thing that came out in the media recently, fruit is getting a really, really bad rap at the moment because there is this whole thing about sugar. And there was an article that came out telling us that fruit was bad for us. And this particular article said that it was because of the fructose in fruit. It was really, really bad for us. It was just as bad as eating sugar. What they weren't telling you within that report was the fact that what they'd actually used to test this were fructose drinks, which behave completely differently to eating a piece of fruit. That will hit your system so fast. You put a liquid into your body like that and it will hit your system so fast. There was nothing else in it. There was no fibre, there were no other nutrients, but people will read that, and people do read that and become afraid of fruit. And it's all these different stories that are coming out, and we as individuals cannot possibly know what's really truly behind it. Is it being led by you know, business and finance, or is it being led by truly wanting us to know what's good for us?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that, Carol. You know, absolutely. It's that kind of, you know, scaremongering where people sort of take the headlines but not looking at the, you know, and it's that education, because people don't understand, do they? So, Jo, what's your take on this, please?
Yeah, I think I agree with so much of what Carol said. I think as humans we have a tendency to overcomplicate things, just in our own head. You know, we overthink things very easily. And so I don't think it helps when the sort of world around us kind of fosters that. It's, you know, paring things back to simplicity is often where it's at. And I think that we are struggling with that a lot at the moment. It doesn't help when words are just kind of thrown around like superfoods and gluten-free, and people are just latching onto these words but not really understanding what they mean. And I remember I just had a thought just now, it must have been about a year ago now, I watched like a little YouTube film where some reporter went out onto the streets of some city and asked the people, do you eat gluten? And they said, no. And they said, well, do you know what gluten is? And, and about 80%, like a large majority, didn't even know what it was they weren't eating, but they weren't eating it because they'd been told it was bad. And it's this lack of information, lack of informing ourselves, and kind of following what people are telling us to do. A bit like, maybe it's not a great analogy, but you know, when you follow your sat nav in your car and there's like a roadworks and you're like, oh, I don't know where I'm going now, because you're so reliant on what someone's telling you. And as soon as something else comes up to challenge that, you're totally thrown off because you haven't got your own kind of, you're not trusting yourself, you're not trusting your intuition. And yeah, I think that's where a lot of the issues lie. I think also, a bit like the whole one size fits all approach, someone may have totally changed their lifestyle around, had an amazing, say paleo diet, and had an amazing transformation, so therefore claims themselves the expert. There's a lot of experts out there that, you know, have nothing more than had an amazing transformation in their own life, which is great, but that doesn't necessarily mean that someone else is going to have that same journey, or you know, mean that you can start saying, you've got to do this, and we'll get this. And I think the expertise in the nutrition industry is just so varied, and you know, you can't guarantee. I mean, I wouldn't call myself an expert to an extent, because, well, a bit like Carol was saying, it's kind of helping someone to find their own inner expert. Obviously, you guide them, and to that extent, I am an expert. But it's just those sorts of words that I kind of like, I struggle with, because you know, they can just be thrown around so easily, and people latch onto things like because they want kind of someone externally to validate, you know, rather than kind of coming at themselves. And I think that's kind of the crux of a lot of the issues. There's so many people that are ready to give that person, you know, what they're asking for. So yeah, that would probably be my take on it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And actually, you know, you touch on a great thing about intuition. And I think last week we were talking about, you know, matching up to people like therapists, you know, about how it's when we're taking advice from somebody, or you know, a therapist or a counsellor, some kind of guide or mentor. It's about having that personal relationship and having someone who you can resonate with, who's suitable for you as an individual, rather than sort of going along and taking some blanket piece of advice that everyone tries to follow but don't get the same results, because we all have our own unique makeup. So Anne, can I bring you into this one, please?
Yes, darling, of course you can. It's been absolutely amazing listening to both Carol and Jo, because I totally agree with both of them. I think one of the important things that strikes me enormously, and that is about the sugar issue and so on, is that what we don't understand is that there are very, very powerful lobbyists who do not want us to understand how dangerous refined sugar is. Now, we imagine that sugar comes in bowls or in cubes or that sort of thing. However, what the vast majority of people are unaware of is just how much sugar there is in things like sauces and processed foods and the like. And the main problem with that is that because you can't see it, you don't realise it's there, and it has a major detrimental effect on your health. Now, one of the important things to realise is that because there are very powerful lobbyists who are working in the media, they're working in the government and so on, they do not want us to understand that sugar in particular is very bad for us. So what they do is they put out lots and lots of controversial information that contradicts everything from one day to another, as you said earlier, Emma, and that leaves the general populace really confused. And because they're really confused, they don't know which way to turn, and so they go to what they are used to. And because they go to what they're used to, they keep on going round and round and down the slippery slope into ill health as they get older. And it's important that people realise that most of the stuff that comes over on television is not intended to make people healthier. It is in fact intended to keep on selling the same stuff that they've always sold. So I agree with both the previous speakers, and I think that together we are going to be able to help others make the differences that they need to take.
Great, thank you, Anne. Yes, and we certainly, you know, in the introductory show last week, we touched on talking about some of that big industry stuff, which we will certainly be coming on to in some of the subsequent shows once we've got things rolling a bit. But absolutely. So, in actual fact, I think it's probably a good point now to ask the question from the lovely Jean Flower in the Southwest Herts area, and she asked a question on the health and wellness community last week, which is: I'm moving back to my NutriBullet next week. What combinations should I be mixing to be healthy? She said that she recently read an article saying that the super greens were not healthy either. So again, this is sort of tapping into that sort of controversy, and I think I'll take this. I'll put this to you, Carol. I think, please.
Hi, Emma. Yeah, I think the problem is that when we talk about superfoods and that kind of thing, that we seem to have this idea that it's almost a cure-all in a sense, and that if we eat this particular superfood, you know, we're going to feel amazing. What is not being understood is that that food will be amazing in combination with lots and lots of other foods as well. So it's important if I'm sorry, Jean, isn't it? Jean that asked the question. Sorry, I forgot her name. If Jean's going back to using her NutriBullet, which I use mine, you know, frequently, is to make sure that she adds different combinations of vegetables and fruits and seeds into her recipes each time she uses it, and not to focus too heavily on one thing. So not to focus too heavily on spinach or kale or broccoli. If you're only focusing on one thing, then you are likely to be delivering too much of one thing into your body. It's really, really important to get a really wide range, whether that be via NutriBullet or, you know, your sort of general day-to-day diet. Focusing on one thing, unfortunately, won't get us the results that we want and can cause further problems. So it's all about balance, which is again what we're talking about in these shows, is getting some balance into your life and eating from a wide range of colours.
Brilliant, thanks, Carol. So I just threw that one in there, but as you were just saying about balance, really, that's, you know, I think that's kind of going to be the underlying message sort of throughout this show and the subsequent ones. So I just want to move on a little bit about, you know, the idea of, okay, we've touched on, you've all touched on, you know, particularly you, Anne, with the sugar information and what we're told, and that, you know, touching on why that might happen with the conflicting information. But of course, so I'd like to sort of look a bit at nutritional education, and of course, one of the big things, I think we will do a show aimed at children's health, children's nutrition at some point, or maybe a series. But you know, of course, we hear a lot in the media about childhood obesity and all of that. And so, you know, if as parents we're not educating ourselves nutritionally, then you know, certainly our children are going to suffer. So I think really looking at, you know, are children suffering really as a result of poorly educated parents on nutrition, you know, and certainly if we can't sort out the wood from the trees, you know, then how are we supposed to sort of support our children? I think that's the next thing. So Anne, do you have something you could offer on this, please?
I didn't unmute me. Can you hear me now? I can't hear you. There you go. Okay, well, today's children spend so much time in front of multimedia, and they spend time in front of computers and televisions and game screens. And researchers found that there's a really strong association between the increase in advertising. But you see, the children actually, they cannot tell the difference between what is a program, what is advertising. And because of that, they have a remarkable ability to remember hook lines from the adverts. And of course, the vast majority of adverts are, by their very nature, exploitative. And product information and preference has been actually shown in as little as a single showing of an advert. And when they get to see multiple adverts, then sorry, I cannot hear you anymore. That's really bizarre. The problem is thank you. The problem is that children see these adverts, they get excited about the way in which they've promoted. And when they go to the supermarkets with their parents, they then push their parents in buying these foods because they're special foods. That's what they've been told on the adverts. Unfortunately, children do not have any discernment, and because the parents do not necessarily have any understanding or education around what is healthy and what isn't healthy, then they will be pushed by their children to purchase. I mean, for example, I don't know whether we should be speaking about particular brands, but you go to so many shops and they've got the sweeties by the till, and I know that where I work there are these sweet dispensers that the children, as they come through the tills, they go straight to the sweet dispensers, and they are demanding that their parents buy them. It's just £1, and they get a little packet full of sugar. I know I'm going on about sugar, but it really is that bad for you. And when children are consuming so much sugar in sweets, in cakes, in biscuits, in even in pizzas and sauces and so on, that is where their insulin balance is all out of whack. That then pushes up the cortisol levels. The whole thing then pushes them towards obesity, which will then lead to becoming obese adults. And then reversing that can be very, very difficult. And of course, children are so vulnerable because they don't understand the difference between an advert and a program.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, I know as a parent with three children myself, the pressure can be immense. You want to rush it, you want to get around the shops, and you've got screaming children. Sometimes, just it's the easy thing to do, isn't it? And it's interesting. We'll pick up that theme. I'll make a note of that, because we can perhaps do a show aimed around some, what you've been talking about. Certainly on sugar would be brilliant. So, Jo, what do you think about education?
Yeah, I totally agree. There's a huge gap. I mean, I just remember when I was at school making things like chocolate chip flapjacks. That was the level of my home economics class. And obviously, if that then is infused over generations, it's only off my own back that I've made decisions to, explore nutrition more. And yeah, the resources weren't necessarily there, or they weren't made obvious. And so I can see how how people fall into that trap of not understanding and then feeling overwhelmed. It's funny because Anna was obviously talking a lot about sugar, and I'm equally as passionate about sugar because it's something that I'm going to go off on a slight tangent, because I think sugar in drinks is a real problem, because we focus so much time on our attention on food, the actual physical things we're eating. But actually the drinks that we're drinking alongside the food that we don't really consider, we don't often think about what we're drinking throughout the day. We might reflect back on what we've eaten, but we don't often think about what we drink. And that's as important with adults as it is with kids. But kids, whether it's the processed fruit juices and the like squash with tons of sugar in it, and the fizzy drinks, and there is so much sugar. And we hear about keeping hydrated. So people are drinking more liquid in general, but it's not always water. It's a lot of sugary beverages. As an example, my mum is a childminder. She looks after lots of kids, and she does feed them a healthy diet. But for a long time, she had that yogurt drink stuff in the fridge. And it was only one day I looked in the back and said, "Do you realise there's like 15 teaspoons of sugar in this 500 bottle?" She's like, "Right," and she never bought it. From that point onwards, just never bought it. But she used to use that in smoothies when she made the kids, because it was a health thing, and just wasn't aware. This awareness around food and drink. And I think the reason I like to talk about drinks quite a lot is because it's easier to change. If you focus on substituting different drinks into healthier versions, it's less overwhelming than the food. And I think when it comes to nutritional education and the children suffering, a lot of that is just fear passed down from the parent. If you're fearful of food because your parents were, that's how you're going to grow up. And again, it takes it from kind of onus of victim, and it's just the balance, the sort of mental balance of it is just wrong. I'm just looking to see if I have any other bits of notes down. But again, breakfast cereals, classic. Kids give kids breakfast cereals, first thing they're eating in the day, get a sugar high, and it kind of it triggers that behavioural cycle of hyperactive children potentially. Some are anyway. I was quite a hyperactive child. I didn't have a particularly bad diet, but it doesn't help. And then obviously kids are then sort of placated with more sweet foods. So it's. I mean, I haven't got children of my own, so I'm trying to be quite careful about what I say, because I can't appreciate what it's like in the supermarket with like screaming children, but I think the cycle is perpetuated, and it's actually how do we break that as a parent. It's like, well, how do I break that? And I think that's what the struggle is. So yeah, I feel like I've gone off on a tangent a little bit, but that's my answer.
No, you're all right. It's great actually. Interestingly, I co-parent with my ex-husband, so we kind of split the childcare quite well, and so how I deal with, certainly as a parent, how I deal with it. Obviously, not all parents have these luxuries, but in my house, I don't have. I decided one day that the arguments, the battle was so difficult. I thought, right, I'm just not going to have anything in the house, that's rubbish for them, so they can't eat crisps all day, they can't eat chocolate all day, they can't have, fizzy drinks and all that. So I stopped altogether. And initially, the initial pain was like, Mum, your house is rubbish. You've got no nice things, but they know now. There's no argument. So they have to find an apple, or they have to find, I don't know, instead of crisps, I sometimes get breadsticks, or it might not be ideal, but it's certainly, for me, it's better than, a thing of nachos, or what do you call them, Doritos, or whatever. And, because they're at that age where they want to eat a lot, and it is a challenge. And interestingly, the sugar thing, Jamie Oliver, I think, there was some stuff going on Facebook about the labelling, and again, this is a whole, the sugar, the shops, the industry, the labelling is another whole area. A thing on Facebook where I think he put bottles of the well-known branded drinks on there, and some of the ones that you would think were sort of more healthy, and instead of the kind of complex thing about the nutritional guide on the back that's just so obscure to most normal people, about different, the sugars broken down into different ones and the grams and then the whatever it is, he put just teaspoons, how many teaspoons of sugar is in this bottle of whatever fizzy pop, and I think he it makes it clearer that way. If you can see, you can imagine, you can kind of look at it and go, whoa, would you sit there and eat 20 teaspoons of sugar off a spoon? Well, some people might, but if you thought of that, you possibly make a different choice. So yeah, Carol, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you certainly know, Emma, that I'm equally as passionate about sugar for many different reasons. But I think that then leads on to other problems, and the gap in education is such that it becomes confusing when you talk about minimising sugar, because what they're being taught in schools is that what we need to do is to swap the foods and drinks which contain sugar for foods and drinks which effectively contain sweeteners and other additives and preservatives, which are equally as bad, if not worse, than the original thing that we were supposed to be taking out of our diet. And what is truly missing, this is my own personal belief, obviously, but I honestly believe that what's truly missing is back to basics education about what real food is. People don't understand anymore. We've been preached to that this is good for us and that's good for us and we should eat this, and we've been advertised to the extent where even mums who were staying at home, who would have been quite happy to cook from scratch for their children, for instance, were actually almost told that they didn't have time to do that anymore. And you don't have to do that because we've got you back. We've got you covered with our ready meals, or our sauces and that kind of thing. What's missing is the difference between whole foods and processed foods, and there's a huge difference. And unfortunately, I feel at the moment that education is unlikely to come through in schools because of the underlying issues which we've touched on already, and that comes down to big business and money that can be made from alternatives.
Yeah, thank you for that, and making lots of notes here actually. For I think we've probably got about enough for about 10 future shows on what we've already talked about. Women and time is another one. The kind of the myth around being able to prepare or not prepare healthy food because of limited time, and then what we're supposed to do with that time once we have it, so interesting. Okay, so I'm going to move on a bit, just keeping an eye on the time, because actually the next bit that we're going to discuss is quite a massive topic. I know that you all work in nutrition with different specialities, so we've touched on the sugar thing, well, quite a bit. That's come up a lot, and of course some might say that's one of the pivotal points, but and I think sort of asking about a question about the diet industry really, and the kind of things that we get sold that are kind of going to change our lives out there, the big things. And from somebody who has attended a whole range of the major weight loss clubs since I was kind of, in my early 20s, and the kind of concept of yo-yo dieting and do they work and all of that sort of thing. The full range of stuff, we hear about low carb, we hear about paleo, we hear about fasting, points, red days, green days, all of that sort of thing, and it's endless. And then you have additional books on other things, and do we have hypnotherapy for it, all of that. So it's endless really. And so what's the impact of all of this dieting and the industry on our health, Carol?
Thanks, Emma. Yeah, again, it goes back to what we said earlier, and certainly in my experience, it is just utter confusion and white noise. And I think it was Joe touched on earlier about not liking the labelling thing, and I'm very much like that. It's we've got the paleo and the Atkins and quite a number of other different diets that we could speak about. And I honestly think, as I said earlier, that it's about learning about ourselves and what we need. I don't think things necessarily have to be labelled. I understand, obviously, when we're talking about sort of vegetarianism and veganism and sort of raw foodists as well, that they are kind of, what's behind that more tends to be about beliefs, not only to do with nutrition and nutritional input, but to do with our own ethical beliefs and that kind of thing. But if I chose to eat a low carbohydrate, high fat diet, is that because I'm an Atkins dieter, or is that because it actually works better for me? And you said earlier, just because, or I think Joe did as well, just because somebody has a massive transformation on one particular diet doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone else. So we do have to allow ourselves the ability to tune in to ourselves and not be put under pressure by other people. The whole word diet, for a start, has been taken completely out of context. And I was watching a program a few nights ago on TV, and there was a lady on there who classed herself as a flexitarian. And I have come across this before, but I listened to what she was saying, and basically what she means is that she eats everything, which is kind of what I do. I eat a massively plant-based diet. That builds the foundations of my diet. But I do eat meat occasionally, and I do eat eggs occasionally from my own hens that are in the garden. But why do I need then to be called a flexitarian? I'm not really quite sure. And it's all these labels and confusion behind what we should be eating that is moving us further away from our own instincts about food and our own ability to pass on nutritional guidance to future generations. That's my belief.
Yeah, thanks for that, Carol. It's quite interesting when you say about, we've talked quite a lot about transformation, of course, everybody being the expert in themselves. And of course, for me, somebody who's made massive transformations in my life with various different things, it's not so much, the message really is it's not so much about, well, I had this massive transformation, and if you copy everything I did, you'll have it as well. It's more about, that message is more, it's, massive transformations are fabulous, but that's more about the fact that showing people that it is possible to have a massive transformation. How you go about that then is entirely your path, really, I think. So interestingly, I think let's go on to ask Anne. Let's bring you in on this one about dieting. We're going to come back to the vegetarian and vegan raw food afterwards. Okay.
Okay. I think that the main issue around this is the whole idea of dieting, and the idea that, I mean, I know that there are many, many, many women who have been yo-yo dieting pretty well all of their lives. They put themselves under a tremendous amount of stress, and they find that once they've been on a diet, the reason that they've gone on a diet is because they want to lose weight. And the losing weight aspect is damaged by the fact that they keep dieting. Now, I don't know whether people realise that when they diet, they put their body into survival mode, because when you have very little nutrition, very little calories coming in, your body goes, help, we're in famine mode, hang on to as much fat as I possibly can. Then, when they start eating again, it relaxes and goes, phew, I can start building up the fat again. Dieting will actually make it much more difficult to lose weight. As you get older, if you think about it, when you're probably in your 20s and your 30s, then the chances are you found it easy to lose weight and then put it back on again, and lose weight and put it back on again. However, when you get older, it's much more difficult to do that because of all of the dieting that you've done in the early years. And going through diet upon diet upon diet makes you miserable because you restrict your calories continuously. It helps to make you fatter as well. Now, as you quite rightly said, we're going to be talking about my own particular choices in the next question. However, one of the things that I have noticed through the training that I've done with other women is that they have noticed that when they eat a lot of wheat, they get bloated. And another thing that happens to them is they find that they get sleepy in the afternoons. And when they try and replace the wheat-based products, for example, breads, a great deal of breads, they go for the gluten-free breads, and they don't like them because they taste like cardboard and they have very little flavour, and they really don't like what they're eating. So they put themselves through decades and decades of food restrictions, which makes them miserable. Then they find that they're bloated with wheat, and so they go on to gluten-free breads, and they find that those are horrible as well. That is a miserable life. I think that finding foods, that natural foods in their raw source, or their, it doesn't matter whether you cook them or not, but in their unprocessed, unpackaged source, and finding new recipes that you can actually make food that tastes amazing and make you feel amazing is the best way of doing this, rather than sticking to, as you say, the Atkins diet or the paleo diet. I mean, that is, all of these diets are so restrictive and so prescriptive. If instead we can simply say, let's start from basics. Let's start from basics and see what we can make from basics, and put together the fruits and the vegetables and so on that you like, and see what you can come up with. And that way you are creating something just for you. It doesn't have to be what everybody else is doing on a particular way. It is just for you. I will not preach to anybody about what I do, but if they want to know how to make some really quick, simple and easy foods, I'll show them.
Thank you, Anne. Yeah, that's interesting. So, you sort of touched on the yo-yo dieting there. Actually, you know, it would be nice if when people watch the show, perhaps we ought to put the question out there. You know, has anybody found lasting success, really? Because if we're going to be, you know, all-encompassing and equal about this, maybe it'd be interesting to see if there are people out there who've experienced kind of real positive lasting effect from some of the you know, well-known diet brand. I was reminded of a statement actually before the show. I think Carol and I were talking a bit about this, and I've got a thing on my fridge that someone bought me many years ago, which says, "I keep losing weight, but it keeps finding me." And of course, that's interesting, and that perhaps another topic about mindset around food and mindset about what we're eating. And of course, for me, and the way we think about things and our beliefs around things is equally as important, if not, more so around making that kind of big transformation. So yes, I thought I was going to say something else there, but I seem to have lost it. So Jo, how about you on this topic?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the impact of it all, typically confusion and overwhelm. But I do think that we have a choice about that. It doesn't have to be the only way. And for me, the whole concept of getting curious about your life, particularly in your nutrition, is the kind of the antidote to overwhelm in many respects. You can't be overwhelmed at the same time as being curious. And I don't just mean that around food, but that's kind of the kind of my little catchphrase a lot of the time. You can be one or the other, but not both. And a little bit of a mini backstory I just reminded myself of was when I transitioned to a vegan diet. It was a total accident. I'm an accidental vegan. I say I'm using vegan in this context, but I would typically use plant-based because you can be a very unhealthy vegan, and that typically has the ethical connotations. But we'll use it for the purpose of the dietary because most people understand it. So yeah, it was my ex-boyfriend who was vegan, and I was wanting to cook meals for him. I was like wanting to explore stuff. I was looking up loads of blogs. I was getting really excited about all these things I could make for him, and then as I spent more and more time with him, over the course of about 5 months, I realised I was eating a 90% plant-based diet. Whoa, where did this come? So I hadn't put a label on it. It just happened. It just evolved, and so there was no overwhelm, confusion, whatever. It just happened. And when I started realising how much better I felt and looked into it in more depth and sort of formalised that transition, I guess, and that's the kind of the journey I try and take people on, because all the things, the low carb, the paleo, the fasting. Interestingly enough, I've tried all of those three within the umbrella of a plant-based diet, and the fasting works quite well for me. It's not something I stick to religiously, but I've found kind of where I sit. I know that high carb diet doesn't work for me so well as a lower carb, which again, within a vegan diet, people think, well, that's strange. I thought vegan was kind of high carb. And so there are lots of ways into finding your own optimal nutritional pathway, and I think just exploring all those things. There are lots of, I say, nutritional kind of pathways as opposed to diet. But they're all there to be explored. If one try something, but if it's not really working for you, kind of tweak it and make your own label up. I don't think that it should necessarily be a source of overwhelm, although that is typically what is the case. But seeing all these options to be something that you can try and think, oh, that doesn't work for me, let's tick that one off. And I kind of think that it can be an exciting journey and not just. But at the moment, for the majority, it's kind of like and so people shut down and think, well, I'm just going to carry on what I was doing because I just haven't got a clue. So I do think support along that journey, whether it be from a coach or a nutritionist or just a supportive friend or family member, is crucial. But yeah, I don't think that the impact of it needs to be negative. So. Yeah, that kind of is where I'm going with that question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. It's sort of about attitude and exploration, really. I think it's going to be, that comes out there. But so let's move on. We've got, roughly 10 minutes left. So if we spend about another 5 or so minutes before we sort of wrap up, because we've all touched on, well, you've all touched on, the sort of plant-based diet, and it'd be interesting to see how we can take the kind of connotations out of the word diet, because of course when we talk about diet in this context, we're talking about a way of eating rather than a kind of sadomasochistic self-punishment regime that we might put ourselves through. So, and I speak from personal experience. There's someone who practices in extremes, some quite a lot, or used to anyway. Okay, so what about the vegetarian and the vegan and the raw then? And you know, given that we've sort of come to a point, you know, the theme of the show really, or the underlying message has been, you know, it's each to our own, you know, live and let live, and also we are the experts in ourselves, which came up in last week's show, and I think will probably happen. You know, this is about instinct and moving forward, getting to know ourselves, which is, you know, kind of what we're all trying to support people with in our own way. So, you know, maybe a very brief little bit about how the vegans amongst us here kind of, well, we know about Joe's story, but certainly Anne, you know, what made you decide to kind of transition to vegan raw, mainly raw diet, and then about our food choices and what we think about that vegan, vegetarian, raw, and do we need to eat that kind of diet to be healthy? And we've kind of touched on that in a way, but sort of pros and cons maybe, and what people might need to know or want to know. So if we can start with Anne. Please.
Well, I became a vegetarian when I was 15 years old, but I was a vegetarian who didn't eat many vegetables. I lived mostly on cheese and potatoes and chips and toast and beer. And I did not have much of an idea about nutrition at all. As long as it made me feel full and I liked the taste of everything that I ate, I felt fine. And then I had a medical and discovered that despite the fact that I'd been vegetarian since I was 15, I was a pre-diabetic, pre-heart condition, and it frightened the life out of me. So I was actually a stone heavier than I was when I was pregnant, 9 months pregnant with both my children, which was quite excessive, to be honest. Nothing was fitting anymore, and it frightened me. So I started doing lots and lots of research. I tried all the various different diets, and I became a life member of one of them. Didn't go back again because I put all the weight back on again. I tried the low carb. I tried all sorts of different diets, and nothing worked. So I actually became raw before I became vegan, because I thought that there was no way that I'd ever be able to give up cheese, because I had cheese on cheesy muffins, I had cheese on chips, I had cheese rolls, I had cheese and cheese and cheese. I lived on cheese. I also suffered every single winter with the most unbelievably painful sinusitis, and every summer I had a horrible summer because I had terrible hay fever. Didn't know that it could be down to the dairy. So then I actually decided that it might be a good idea to see if I could cut out the dairy and cut out a whole variety of different things which could be causing me problems. And I found that the weight just dropped off. I went from 12 stone 7 down to 9 stone 7. My hay fever cleared up. I had chronic acne. As you can see, that's cleared up as well. And I no longer get any sinusitis any winter. Now, I also then went and bought the book. I've got so many books. I read them thoroughly and I go, oh, that makes sense, that makes sense. If it makes sense, I try it out. And I recently bought the book, Eat Right for Your Blood Type. And I thought, okay, I'm A diet, I'm A blood type. What does that mean? I was delighted to discover that I should be a vegetarian. So I thought, hey. But because I couldn't trust myself to be a healthy vegetarian, and I know that dairy messes my whole system up, I had to cut it out. But I couldn't do without cheese, so I have found cheese alternatives. I make them myself, and it's very, very, very easy. I can make a mature cheddar in about 30 seconds. And I also make my own seed bread, which I can then have cheese on toast, but not the usual way. And it's finding, I mean, I make my own pizzas, but there's no cheese on them, there's no wheat in the base, and all of these things and more are things that you can discover how to make that will actually make your transition into a different sort of lifestyle much, much easier. Because I was a chips and cheese and bread fiend, I have replaced all those with healthy versions. And because I've made healthy versions, I no longer feel tired and I no longer get sinusitis. So it works for me. I know that the vast majority of people couldn't do as strict a diet as I do, but I don't feel that my diet's strict. I feel that my diet is forever full of exciting recipes and exciting things to do. I make chocolate a lot as well, and I love it. And I take it out to share with people, and they love it too, which is also great.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anne. Joe, let's have a look. Obviously, we've heard from Anne, around the health challenges, and it's great now that, like you say, Anne, you've been able to listen to yourself and kind of find the diet that suits you. Joe, you already told us a little bit about how you became a vegan, and what tips would you give, I think, to somebody who's kind of contemplating that, and sort of maybe sort of the pros and cons for people considering a really radical shift in diet, I think.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. This is a subject I love to talk about because the curiosity in people who are wanting to make a change is where all the magic happens. The biggest thing, I think, is the principle of crowding out. It's not about removing things from a diet, it's about adding so much good stuff in that the things the less desirable things are kind of naturally sort of, get rid of. Kind of. So adding tons more veg in probably means that you end up eating potentially less meat or whatever. Adding so many healthy sweet treats or fruit-based baked goods or dates, whatever, probably means you start cutting out the refined sugar. But focus on it that way around, as opposed to I must not eat sugar, I must not eat chocolate. Raw chocolate, like Anne said, yeah, it's awesome. So there are so many ways that you can replace, the sweetness in ways. It's not about I can never eat a sweet thing ever again. So the crowding out principle is a huge one. I'd say to anybody, not even just about going towards a vegan diet, just changing your diet. And doing one thing at a time. It's not just about, if you eat a very traditional kind of eat everything kind of diet, well, see what you feel like if you cut out the dairy. Because a lot of people have issues with dairy and don't realise it if they've been eating it all their life. Try and do 3 weeks or a month without dairy, see how you feel, kind of get a sense of what your body's telling you, and then maybe try, one of my clients, she eats a typical diet, but she's actually gone much more vegan now, but she had a vegan day and 2 vegetarian days a week, and would enjoy planning for those days. The rest of the time in the week she just ate normally, but it's just adding more vegan or vegetarian meals in, so you can kind of just, got one meal to think about in the whole, in 21 meals across the week. It's just one thing you're planning for, and if you enjoy that, you're like, oh, maybe add another one in. So it's just taking it slowly and also sharing it with other people, having a support system around you. So if your kids or your parents or your friends are also on board with just trying it and having an accountability buddy, all those sorts of things are the tips that I would give to help transition. Obviously, I come from a vegan point of view, so I'm sort of saying, transitioning towards a vegan diet, but it applies for anything. And in terms of the pros and the cons and the health benefits, a big one is the anti-inflammatory aspect. It's more alkaline. It's just kinder to the body. Particularly, my dad went vegan a similar time as I did, like 4 years ago, and for him it was very much a health thing because he was getting to the age where you start feeling the diseases of old age kind of thing, and he wanted to try and fend off fend off those as long as possible. So that was his motivation to do it. So the alkalinity and the anti-inflammatory is a big bonus. Obviously, that's a whole topic in itself, so I won't talk any more about that. But I think, yeah, it's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, thanks ever so much, Jo. Gosh, right, we'll just can we hear a bit from you then, Carol? Because I know you know, it's quite interesting also for me as somebody who does eat meat, and I know you do as well. Just to hear a bit about your eating habits.
Yeah, I just can say that I'm totally in agreement with so much of what's been said already, and I do think that the whole thing that's coming out here is about learning about yourself personally and what works for you, and that's exactly what I've done. You know, I've had similar problems with dairy. I do not get on with dairy at all. I can eat you know, the odd piece of cheese and it'd be fine, but if dairy's in my diet continually, I start to suffer with you know, sort of coughs and problems with my nose and that kind of thing, and never before put it down to dairy until I decided to kind of look at reducing it. And also, I have said a number of times throughout this show that the majority of my diet is plant-based, and you know, I absolutely love plant-based foods, and I have to say as well that there's a good part of my diet that is raw, and I like experiencing and playing around with raw foods as well. So I've got a whole spectrum within there, but what I've learned about myself is that I did take out meat and all animal products for some time, and actually I started to feel, I felt much better to begin with, but then started to feel that things weren't quite right. I didn't have quite as much energy as I usually have, and so now I add in a little bit of animal protein each week, not lots, but I do have a little bit, and I do feel better. And the same with wheat and gluten as well. I cannot eat gluten or wheat-based products every day. I just it doesn't agree with me at all. I get what Anne was talking about earlier about it's sort of unexplained tire appears around my middle, and I can feel really uncomfortable. However, if I don't include, I guess I'm talking not only about wheat-based products and gluten-based products, but whole grain-based products. I've kind of put that in the wrong bracket. Really, it all comes under the same umbrella of what I'm talking about. Is that if I don't add some in each week, my digestive system doesn't work as well as it should. So that's what I've learned about myself, and I also know that if I don't allow myself, if I went out for coffee the other day with my family, we went out for a walk, had a lovely time, and we went to this really nice cafe where it's all really good, honest, home-cooked food, and my family wanted cake, and I know if I'd have sat there and not had a piece of cake, I would have felt left out. Now, at one point, that would have led me to eating a whole load of sweets afterwards, but now it doesn't do that, and I can sit and enjoy a piece of cake for what it is and really enjoy that moment, and then simply it's just part of you know, a balanced diet for me these days. So that, again, it's about me trying out things personally, and I am still on a journey, and so I guess everyone else is here as well, is that, you know, we're all learning new things and trying out new things, but not dieting, not restricting ourselves because we've been told we should. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, great. So interesting. I wanted to have a bit of time to sort of round everything up, and I think the final question and the question of the show: what should be eating? What should we be eating? And in actual fact, I kind of did that on purpose in an ironic way, because I thought that we might end up in this place, which is, you know, what people have been talking about through the show, about not restricting ourselves, not feeling that we should or shouldn't do anything, having that balance, that moderation. It came up in last week's show, and I think we're going to end up, noticing a theme throughout all of the shows over the next few months, coming up in certain key words. And I think really this is brilliant, because we've got balance here. We've got people from all the full spectrum of diet and eating and nutrition, and I want to say, interestingly, make a public declaration here myself, because I believe in authenticity, and honesty and openness, and I'm about to embark on a kind of transition with Carol. I've reached a point again with my own eating at the moment that I know for myself that I need to make some changes, and I'd like some support with that. Carol and I are doing some work together anyway, so I wanted to work with her on that. And it's interesting, I think maybe around, like, with you guys here, certainly dipping in with some tips. For me, it's been great. And sometimes it's about this stuff it's stuff that we sometimes know already. There's the stuff that we don't know, we don't hear about, and we learn the brand new stuff. But then sometimes it's about how we mobilise the stuff that we, in the depths of our recesses, we do know, and how we transition from getting stuck in a rut with our eating and the way we do things, and then actually making transitions when you have that fear barrier to cross, where you go, oh God, And I think certainly it might be, it might be worth us doing maybe a video blog or something over the coming weeks, Carol, and maybe some tips coming in from you guys, because from my point of view, it's about myth busting as well with all of health changes and lifestyle living. Sometimes we have these busting, and people know from my addiction background, for me, I can't make excuses for why I can't do things. I have to get off my backside and do it, so certainly for me, I with three children that need looking after, limited finances at the moment, I work pretty much every hour that God sends. I can sit here and go, do you know what, I haven't got the time, I haven't got the money, my kids won't eat it, I'm too busy, I can't think, I haven't got the right equipment, whatever, okay? I'm putting it all out on the table here, because I think that I'm sort of, it might be about Carol, us being able to show somehow that journey of how it can be done and how we can gain time back, actually, because obviously sometimes the time taken where I might feel a bit rubbish is time that could have been gained had I eaten properly that day or that week or whatever. I had a thing last week with that sort of fainty thing. But interestingly, going back to the vegetarian and vegan thing, certainly I actually worked in a vegetarian cafe a couple of years back for a few months in Biggleswade, the Courtyard Centre, and it was great for me because I was cooking in there, and I loved all the food. And Beth, who runs the cafe, we had raw food lunches, and we had gourmet raw and vegan and vegetarian dinners with 3-course meals, and the food is absolutely delicious. So I think it's about changing some of that mythology and the stereotype of what a vegan is or a vegetarian or raw, and and I think shifting that, and certainly getting to know what it really is like to eat well. I think we've had a really good demonstration of that today from all you guys, and it's been fab. So just to go through everybody again from what I know of people, I know certainly if there's anyone out there watching this who's heard something from any of our guests today, we certainly have people here who can guide you through into that healthier eating sort of lifestyle, and the support and peer support for me is massive. These are people who've been through it themselves. We've all experienced it in some way, and I know that Anne is available. I know some of the girls had an evening with you a few weeks ago where Anne is able to go into people's homes and show people how to make some of this raw vegan food, and take the angst out of it and show how easy it is in a step-by-step process. I know Anne can do that, and I know that Jo, also can coach people on their nutrition. She has the whole food part of their business as well, and a lovely retreats that we see. That I've seen some of the people posting some of the comments and the things that they've done at the retreats, and we perhaps have you on a bit in another one to talk more about the retreat side of things, and also Carol, certainly with you with your nutritional coaching and guidance, and certainly for me, if you can help me with the whole sugar thing, I'd be more than grateful. But perhaps we can keep people updated somehow with my I'm happy to kind of hang it all out there really, and let everyone see me sobbing in my cup of green tea when I'm in the depths of I want a piece of cake. But it's about balance. I joke a bit. It is about balance. I've transitioned before without having caffeine and sugar. It's about maintaining that for me, and looking at the obstacles that we put to eating a healthy in a healthy diet and living a healthy lifestyle. So thank you, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been really, really exciting. I know we've had messages going up about people wanting to hook in and connect with each other. So that's great. Just if anyone wants to come in and say goodbye. Anne, would you like to come in and say farewell?
Yes, I would love to say I thoroughly enjoyed being in this show, and it's so amazing that there are other women in the area, and probably men as well, obviously, who feel the same way that I do. And as far as sugar concerned, just read the labels if you're going to buy packaged stuff. And if you don't have to buy packaged stuff, get the fresh stuff and try and get organic. It's free of pesticides, and that is important. So that's enough for now. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you. Jo?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and for anyone who's watching, thank you so much for being part of it. I have, my website is includingcake.com, and I have hundreds and hundreds, 4 years worth of refined sugar-free, vegan and predominantly gluten-free recipes. So it's all about creating the curiosity around it. So for anyone who wants to further that conversation, that's where they'll find me. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say. But yeah, just get curious about life.
Thank you. Thank you. Carol?
Yeah, fantastic. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody that's attended and taken part today, and again, to the viewers' questions and what have you that are popping up. It's absolutely brilliant. And just to round it off, I think that really the only should in what we should be eating is about eating nutritious foods that actually nourish our body and help us to thrive. And apart from that, what you should be eating is what's absolutely right for you and for your body. And the guys that are on here can help you to uncover that and to become your inner expert and really help you to thrive and move forward with your life with food.
Brilliant, thanks Carol. And if anybody wants to get into contact with Jo Hodson or Anne Peckham or Carol Wildgoose or myself, then you can find us on Facebook and on via Link for Growth. And so do drop us a line, and we can put you in touch with one or other of us along the way. So that'll be fab. So we'll see you all next week, where we are going to be discussing food and mood. And that's going to be a really interesting one. So till next week, have a good day, everyone.